Aloha kako. Good evening. I'm Kelly Miyamura, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you here on behalf of our foundation to our Pau Hana and our community conversation. I wanted to open this time together with an oli that was recently taught to me by our partner, Maya Safri from Ka'ulua Kalana, and it was taught to her by her kumu, Mapuana de Silva. And when she shared it with me recently, I knew it was what I wanted to share with all of you tonight. It comes from the mo'olelo of Hi'iakaika Polio Pele, Pele's youngest sister, as she goes on her epic quest across Hawaii. She goes to Hawaii and Maui, Molokai, and as she passes through Oahu, she goes to the hills of Mahinui above Kauai Nui. And there she can see the entire ahupua'a of Kailua. And she's there with her companion, Wahine o Ma'o. And Wahine o Ma'o sees below them at Kauai Nui 2 beautiful women who are wearing ilimale and points them out. And in this oli, Hi'iaka has a teaching moment with Wahine o Ma'o, where she says, you need to look below the surface. You need to look deeper. These are not women, they are the mo'o, our guardians of Kailua. And so we want to share this oli with you here tonight to honor so many of you that are here with us who are the guardians, the kia'i, the protectors of our aina and community. And we want to mahalo your deep kuleana and your deep aloha and love for Hawaii. O kailua I reo ho kamalanai, moi kalau I keuki, I puiwai kaleo kamanulai, e kuhiana oe wahine, aulela. O Hawaii no me heiala, Navahine o kailua I kalai.
Aloha, my kako. Thank you for joining us to create this space together. It is incredible to see you all here as we celebrate the power of relationship and community in community-led solutions. After the wildfires on Maui 2 years ago, one of Hawaii's amazing community leaders, Kawila Hanchett of Holani Hana, anchored the community amidst devastation and destruction with these words: "We are not passive recipients of aid. We are the navigators for our future." There are so many incredible community navigators and heroes here today. And we're taking our cues from you and our direction from you as we look into the horizon. In recent years, Holani Hana and Hui Malama Ike Ala'ulili partnered up to design a learning exchange between their islands of Maui and Hawaii Island. They called it a kipuka to kipuka learning exchange. Kipuka are the small areas, for those of you that don't know, of aina that are left untouched in lava flow. And so while the aina might look scorched and blackened, there are these pockets, these kipuka of resilience. From there, though they might be invisible to us in the moment, they grow and they call us into stories of hope. This is the key to us moving forward together in a positive direction and a healing direction right now. Because when we're governed by feelings of fear and loss, we tolerate things we wouldn't otherwise. And so we have to be governed by hope. Especially as we think about the way that each and every one of us are educators right now. And the actual educators in the room are looking worried about this, I know. But I mean this in the sense that young people are watching us for signals that there is a pathway forward based on values. There's a pathway forward for restoring things without leaving each other behind. We are in each other's care. And people of all ages need for us to model for each other what that looks like and what we can do to resource communities to control their own futures. And it takes a certain amount of courage and risk and relationship to not only rebuild but create new pathways for resilience. We thrive when we lean into local strengths. We thrive when we lean into each other. So tonight's program is about action. Action rooted in community knowledge and relationships. It allows us to weave resources together creatively and generatively. We'll hear from leaders who exemplify this approach, as all of you do. And three of them that are going to join us up here today in this panel. Chelsie Evans, Executive Director of Hawaiian Community Assets. Keoni Lee, Co-CEO of Hawaiiʻi Investment Ready. And Billy Pieper, Senior Vice President and Director of Strategic Partnerships at American Savings Bank. Holding space for this conversation is Xan Avendaño, our incredible Senior Program Officer with the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation. Hello, Xan. And before we begin, I want to express deep gratitude to all of the staff and trustees of the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation here today, many from great distance, many states as well as other countries. They've come from afar, and I want to thank them for their stewardship and deep commitment, their encouragement to look at the opportunities to rise to the challenges, and the dramatic solutions that are there on the horizon for us, all of these things that come with dramatic change. So I will, with that, just say your leadership, all of you, and those of you on this panel, your leadership and partnership make gatherings like this meaningful and impactful. And let's also just enjoy each other's company and enjoy having this time together, sharing ideas, building connections, and envisioning a future where solutions come from the heart of our communities. Mahalo nui loa, and let's get started.
Aloha. Guys are gonna have some fun today. We were out in the courtyard and wonderful. Well, first of all, I went out in the courtyard and looked around at all your spaces, and I was like, oh, I gotta stand on the stage in front of them? You are the leaders of our community. You are the solutions that we're all looking for, and it's all in this room. So can we start with a round of applause for you? And I get to host a wonderful panel of amazing people, helping to drive forward creativity, creative solutions that we all need for our future. Right now, all of us feel the heaviness of so much dismantling federally of social service systems that took years to make, that folks rely on every day to eat, to be housed. And amidst that, one of the themes from this week of our meetings with our guests from Baltimore is that it can be so hard to envision a new reality when the person in front of you is hungry. And envision a new future. And so it's so critically important that we hold spaces for creativity, for imagination, for wonder, that's founded and based on the past that you all know and cherish and teach us every day, but is also grounded in hope for what can be. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today with our wonderful panel here. So joining us is Keoni Lee, Co-CEO of Hawaiiʻi Investment Ready, a nonprofit impact investing intermediary that was founded in 2013 as the first Native-led accelerator in Hawaii and in the United States. And he's also a trustee of the Chelsie Foundation. Give it up for Keoni! Also with us is Chelsie Evans, Executive Director at Hawaiian Community Assets. With her roots in Makavao, Maui, Chelsie has worked across the islands and learned from so many community leaders in her journey to grow as a Native Hawaiian leader, helping to support families to have financial and housing stability that offers generational opportunities for abundance. Welcome, Chelsie. And lastly, Billy Pieper, Senior Vice President and Director of Strategic Partnerships at American Savings Bank. With over 20 years of finance experience, Billy brings his passion about making real impact in community into his role at ASB. He has led several initiatives for housing Hawaii's families, including This Is Home for first-time homebuyer programs, a mortgage-backed lending initiative with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and he's also board chair at Hawaiian Community Lending. Give it up for Billy. Chelsie, we're gonna start with you. And the reason I'm gonna start with you, Chelsie, is because you can so effectively help to ground us in how Hawaii's families right now are experiencing this time, and then where the solutions are. So can you help start to paint the picture for us of how Hawaiian Community Assets is adapting to meet families where they're at in this moment, and help to provide some of those solutions and opportunities?
Yeah, we don't have the answers. I always like to start with that, right? Like what families are struggling with right now, the gaps of what they're having to make up for, there's not a lot of answers out there. But the thing that we do bring to the table is that our counselors, our housing specialists, the people that work with us are the people. They're the people from the communities. When we are looking to hire, we're looking for people who have walked in the same shoes, because it is really, really hard to understand what people are going through, what it takes to get to the next steps, how much effort it takes, how tiring it can be, unless you've done it yourself. And we've been in so many spaces where we're hearing blanket suggestions, everybody 80% under AMI should have these restrictions. And we're an organization that works directly with the people and know that that doesn't work. There is no blanket answer. And so what we get is the opportunity for people who have walked in difficult situations to connect with someone who is worked right now and talk about the steps, as little as those steps might be, but all of those little steps end up to having huge impact, and it gives hope and it gives real tangible opportunities for people to work towards their goals.
Oh, Chelsie. Keoni, from your seat at Hawaiian Investment Ready, seeing the landscape right now, can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing in resourcing community-driven, community-led efforts like HCA, and what the nonprofits have to experience since you're playing this intermediary role between funders and nonprofits?
Yeah, I think at the macro level, when you look out across all the myriad of issues in Hawaii, from housing to food and small business or cost of living, we have to recognize that these are like highly interconnected issues. Our families don't face these issues like in isolation, and neither do our communities. And so what I think we're trying to do at Hawaiian Investment Ready is bridge the gap between a mismatch in realities, right? Because on what our communities are experiencing and how they're experiencing the challenges, like Chelsea's talking about, is one reality. And then how we fund and how we invest in economic development is another reality, because traditional approaches to finance and to philanthropy are like, a lot of it is single issue, right? Single issue, single project, things in buckets and silos. And that's how the way things have been done, right? Like in traditional finance, you optimize and you analyze and you do diligence on an investment within your portfolio or project, and you're optimizing the risk and return for that single project. I think philanthropy follows, like traditional philanthropy has kind of followed the same thing. They do their due diligence and they figure out what's best within this silo of an analysis. But what we really need to do is figure out how to cross those silos and really look at the interconnectedness of our issues. And when we do so, right, like we open up possibilities that weren't otherwise available to us. And, you know, we have to think about the work that's being done in our communities where they have the lived experience, they know the problems, they're coming up with solutions that fit and match the reality of their community and the folks who are experiencing the problems, where we need the solutions to happen, right? So community is really like, when communities are collaborating towards solutions, they are absorbing risk, right? They are doing the early assessments, they're doing the early relationship building. And what that does is it reduces risk for solutions. It conditions the soil better to receive capital so you can actually be more efficient and more effective and more adaptive along the way. But that forces the funding and the capital deployment to meet community where it's at. And I think that's the role that we're trying to play, is trying to align these two realities into a way that where everybody can start to see that we're better sharing risks across all of these stakeholders, and we can get better leveraged returns in the long run, and we can get more efficiency and better use out of every dollar that's put out into the ecosystem, into these community-led solutions.
Beautiful. Billy, you want to take that away from your hat as at a bank? Where does a bank fit in that conversation of how we share risk that Keoni just highlighted?
Yeah, it doesn't sound as smart as those two, but I mean, maybe just a disclaimer. So obviously I'm here representing American Savings Bank, but I'm here as a Hawaiian, Team Hawaii, concerned about where we at. And I assume a lot of you folks are as well. And you're here concerned that the future of Hawaii is in jeopardy. And as a bank, what we've done is noted that because the future of our franchise is in jeopardy, because we are a local community bank. And if the essence of what makes Hawaii special is watered down and the local people end up leaving, you find that the need for a franchise like ours isn't as necessary, because you can get banking from other places. And so, to reflect back on Sean's question, we do not have a choice to sit back idly and rely on what we've been doing as a bank to help spur the economy or help get people into homes. We need to partner with people, because we're at the point now where the pain of remaining the same is greater than the pain of change. We don't have time to waste. And so what the banks are looking at doing, and it's not just me, and there are other local banks doing the same thing, is we're looking at how we use the levers that we have at our discretion, mainly capital, to deploy in a way that's going to help local people in particular stay here, whether that's through financing homes, whether that's through financing businesses, whether that's through financing housing development, whether that's through giving, through philanthropy. Be more direct about our giving, not just giving and buying tables at galas, which we're all, somewhat, you buy a table for me, I buy a table from you. And how do we get a little more serious and focused about our philanthropy strategy? And for ASB in particular, it's really about housing.
Let's dive a little bit into a case study of what this really can look like. To Melissa's point about focusing this panel on action. And I hope this part can just be a conversation and be some riffing, because what we want to share now is a little bit of what does it look like when there's an opportunity to create a regenerative resource for our community that focuses on housing local people. And where do different folks come into that equation and help to spread the risk out across different entities. And so Keoni, I'm wondering if you could start us off by sharing a little bit of the story with your subsidy hat on but also the HCR have helping the HCL to get to the Hawaii community when it gets where they are today. Around that conversation of there's an affordable housing fund available. How do we as SubSD put our endowment on the table and help to real investment?
Yeah, so I joined the Chelsie Foundation, I think we were somewhere near $250 million in assets under management, and we're on a spin down. So all the assets are going to be gone by 2029. And so when I looked at the timeline for how the capital was going to be deployed and our cash flow, there was a three-ish year window where we were sitting on some liquid assets that we didn't need to invest because we're spend down. But we also, could do a little bit more with those. And so I was able to put together a strategy for us to do PRI, so program related investments, basically philanthropic loans. And we carved out $30 million of our liquid assets to do these 3-year PRIs, so that we can activate our balance sheet into more impact rather than just sitting in some other liquid investment. And what we ended up doing is I reached out to Jeff because Jeff had gone through HIR's accelerator, and I was like, hey Jeff, I got this capital. I was like, you're interested in 0 or 1% PRI? He goes, yeah, that'd be great, but I need 5 years. And I was like, man, I don't know if that's gonna work. And he's like, no, I really need 5 years. And I was like, okay. So we went back and we rejiggered some things, and we were able to say yes to that. So one, this good part of that story is Jeff knew what he needed, and he stood up for it, and he told me no, because we had a relationship. And then the responsibility was on me to go and figure out how to make that work. And so we were able to do that. And what I think it enabled, what it did was this investment was start to get the water flowing for their investments. Like they had some traction. It also enabled them to bring down the interest rates because our cost of capital to them was so low that they were able to bring down the rates that they were charging the Hawaiian Homes borrowers to do their construction loans. So, yeah, I mean, we can have more of a conversation because Alton, you should share on your side what it activated with you folks.
No, right, and so that activated something in us to say, we, ASB, didn't lend to Hawaiian homeland beneficiaries with a vacant land lease. So they had this land, but they couldn't get financing to build a house. But Jeff's organization did, and it does. They provide capital for these families to buy the home. Once the home is built, ASD happily will provide financing to do a permanent takeout. But what that spurred in us was Jeff's revolving loan fund that he was using to deploy capital to these beneficiaries was small. I think it was $1 million. So, you figure a house is $300,000 or so to build, you're only doing 3 of these or so a year. So what Jeff said is, hey, what if ASB came in, provided us a line of credit, not market, if you could, ASB, give us a little discount. They could blend the rate to the beneficiary so that it's still affordable for the beneficiary to build. Once the house is built, then we could provide the takeout financing through a HUD 184A Hawaiian Homeland loans that we got certified to do. Recapitalize HCL, right? Refill their revolving loan fund and do it again. And so that's what we agreed to do. We did $2 million to start. $2 million, so $1 million went to, it went up more when subsidy gave, but $1 million went to call it $8 million, and that now $8 million revolving loan fund, instead of building 3 homes a year, is now building 12 homes a year. And so you see how just something as simple as that wasn't even on our radar. That wasn't even something the bank was considering. And now we are about 18 months into this with a couple homes built. And so it's again a testament of, obviously through Pilina relationship, but also just math, right? It's math. And we're regulated, but yet within the guardrails of what we can do as a bank, we still can do this kind of stuff. We don't have to be rigid and only do certain things that we've done in the past. So that's one great example.
Yeah, I think it's important, obviously commercial banks have a lot more capital to deploy, right? They have more assets to deploy. But unlocking that capital and getting it to actually move into these community solutions, we have to be understanding of, you have to report to shareholders and you have particular risk and return, like parameters that you have to work within. We can shift a little, if there's good people and like leaders in in these institutions that want to do good things for our community, but they can only move so far. So that's why community philanthropy, we got to work together to de-risk these projects by collaborating so that we can intentionally create a situation where this commercial capital can come in ways that it couldn't before. So, catalytic capital is a term in philanthropy where it provides the first layer of risk to help de-risk projects. Like, these are the kinds of things that we need to be thinking about with these creative capital solutions, where the more complex an issue, the more collaboration that's necessary to solve it, right? And so that applies even in finance. So, Jeff and HCA, you guys have these relationships with community and with DHHL to provide guarantees and, figure out this complex solution to be able to make all this work. And you just needed the right capital partners who had the right risk and return profiles in the right places in the capital stack to be able to make this thing grow. And so now we have a model, we have a demonstration of what's possible when we do these kinds of capital collaborations.
And Chelsie, can you share a little bit, as we're talking about this concept of risk, we're talking about risk in terms of investments and return, and I'm sure people are thinking, well, that sounds risky to invest in our local families, in our local communities. Is that a risky thing to do? To support them to get a home. Chelsie, from where you're at Hawaiian Community Assets, can you share a little bit about your experiences just in terms of math of helping to demystify some of that?
Yeah, for sure. So Hawaiian Community Lending is our sister organization. And I harassed Jeff this morning and I was like, I need your numbers. Like, what is your default? So as a lender, and a lender that lends to people who normally cannot qualify for loans from a conventional bank, right? So these are considered higher risk loans. Their default rate is under 5%. And majority of the 5% are actually sitting in COVID loans. So those are monies that are gonna get refunded back anyway. And those were a very strategized risk, like, yes, these are high risk loans, but we know what this money is going for. It's another opportunity to make sure people can stay alive at this point, right? So that's where a lot of the risk falls. And a big portion of that is the housing counseling piece. It's every single person who are getting these loans through these CDFIs or receiving housing counseling, right? As they're walking through the entire loan process, they have a counselor walking beside them. A very easy example is a Hawaiian Homes development happening. People were building homes. We had our client building on one lot. Next door client building, same house, very similar situation. About 2 weeks before they were supposed to close on their loan to get their takeout loan, right? After their construction loan, time to buy the house and move in. They no longer qualified for the home because they used their credit card to go buy the furniture for the home. They lost that house. But people who are going through housing counseling get coached the entire way and warned a lot from their counselors to go like, this is the thing, this is the risk now, this is what you should not be doing now, these are the things to pay attention now. And that is a huge difference. And I always talk about this, the housing counseling piece, it's not the sexy piece. Nobody wants to fund that. Nobody wants to talk about financial education as being, but it is a huge factor of the decline in the risk opportunities, right? ASB saw it, they funded our counselors in a lot of ways for the housing, but it is that entire package. We have conversations, I won't get too much into it, but affordable housing developments that happen, for-profit developers, we always talk about, you should put something in your budget. Let us work with the people who are interested in your development. Let us help them early. It takes 2 years sometimes to get people up to speed, credit, debt to income ratio, all the things. Nobody does it. And we get the calls when they can't put people in the houses because it's a slim margin that you need to fit in to be under a certain AMI, but have a certain credit rate, to have a certain DTI. It's a lot of work to be able to fit in that tiny little pocket, and it costs money. But it is one of the ways that you can really decrease the risk on loans like this. That's often acknowledged.
And as we talk more about what does it look like to create some of these alternative financial structures to fund housing, to collaborate around how to distribute risk. Keoni, I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more as you and your role with HDI have helped this conversation around alternative methods of ownership, of stewardship, of community ownership of lands, and how to include housing in that conversation. Wondering if you could share some of those examples of investment opportunities, perhaps for the future in that space.
Well, for sure. I mean, in partnership with Weinberg, we were asked to facilitate a cohort of community-based organizations that are looking at land ownership, housing, cooperative housing, community land trusts, housing trusts, things like that. Just thinking about a different paradigm of community-based ownership and stewardship of land and housing. And it's been pretty phenomenal to just be in the space and observe and witness. What I do know from this is Hawaii does not lack solutions. Our communities are generating really innovative models and solutions. They understand the problems they're trying to solve for, they understand the risks, they understand what's the best fit solutions, and they're innovating, and they're sharing ideas with each other. There's this cross collaboration, this working across the silos and sharing intel and cheering each other on and learning from each other, and sharing. And that's kind of different vibes that we get in mainstream, right? Like instead of being competitive with each other, there's a lot more cooperation. And so, I think specifically on the housing side, the community land trust movement is definitely gaining a lot of traction. There's some of these folks in here that know what I'm saying. From the Hawaiian Community Land Trust to Molokai Heritage Trust, which is going to buy back the Molokai. Right? Like 55,000 acres of a third of the island is an ambitious endeavor. But when you really look at the history and you look at the community organizing and you look at the governance model that they've built and the partnerships that they have, they're de-risking investment. And, they're going to be able to create a model there because of the dynamics and the relationships within the community, because of the history, because of who they are as a community. And same thing goes with the island, right? Like these communities have such rich history and relationships. When they come together with these collaborative solutions, we have to honor that. Like we have to really take a look at it. So when we're looking at it, you see the governance models, you see the financing structures, you see the plans that they have. And if your decision making and your goal is a longer horizon, like multiple generations out in the future, and not a 5-year short-term horizon of a return, they are the better investment, right? And so, there's plenty of examples, but I want to add a Xan real.
Yeah. So before we go into some Q&A for everyone to be a part of this conversation, I wonder if we can go down the line here and just share, what's, with Keoni, you set that up perfectly. As we go into this, as we embark on this voyage into what's next for Hawaii, Hawaii's place in the world, or what's something that's giving you hope within the seat that you're working in at ASP, at HCA, at HIR, that folks in this room might be inspired to help contribute to some of their work in all the different ways that we have agency to influence the future.
Yeah, I'll share one example we're doing with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. I feel like Native Hawaiian organizations in general, a lot of times have lackluster history. It is what it is. And there's a sense of rebuilding trust in a lot of agencies. The HHL is one of them. Office of Hawaiian Affairs is another. But they decided to repurpose some of their standing capital, meaning money that needs to sit on their balance sheet, but doesn't necessarily need to earn the 12% bogey or rate of return for other parts of their portfolio. So they're repositioning that some of that capital with American Savings Bank to then, and again, this is bank agnostic, guys, but they're repositioning it with us. And then we are taking that capital and using it to serve as a credit enhancement or basically a pledge to then lend to issue mortgages to their affinity group. So in this case, Native Hawaiians. And in this case, they wanted to attract the working force. So they threw out a number of 140% AMI, $200,000 of household income for a family of four, basically. And so what we do is now we issue below market mortgages to that affinity group. Discounted interest rate, no LLPs, and without getting technical, without extra fees. And the kicker is no mortgage insurance. Because we have OHA's pledge or deposit serving as a pledge, we don't need to charge mortgage insurance for mortgages that people put less than 20% down. And you know how hard it is to put 20% down on a house here in Hawaii? I mean, the median condo is $500,000, right? So that's $100K. It's not easy. So the beauty of this is it's a win-win-win in the sense that OHA repositioned some of their capital with the bank that's safe deposit. We pay interest, they continue to accrue interest. We then use that capital to issue mortgages to the people that they want to help, right? And save them $1,000 a month or so, right? So they can stay in Hawaii. The bank benefits because we get deposits now that we can deploy, right? So we are a little bit more liquid and then we can do more of this. And so this is just one thing that gives me hope in the sense that nobody would have thought OHA would have been a first mover for something like this, let alone ever, right? Well, they were the first. They said, let's try. You can't learn how to drive in a park car. Let's get this thing moving. And so they deposited the first $1.5 million, and now they just deposited another $1.5 million. So we moved from pilot to permanent. We're going to get 17 more families, and this is something that we're learning as we go. So $1.5 million did 17 mortgages for us, the last 6 months. What if we could get better with our, the management of our credit enhancement and now do 34 with that same amount, or 68 with that same amount? And so that's what we're trying. And so that gives me hope because we're trying stuff and we're going to learn. And it's not always going to be perfect, but we're de-risked. We are looking at the people that matter most, and what I think the bigger picture, and I'll pass Chelsie, is what if we started doing this with employers? What if healthcare systems said, you know what, we got to take care of the nurses. What if DOE said, we got to take care of the teachers. Let's save them $1,000 on their mortgage. What if we do this with the state? I mean, state's doing Hana Kama'aina, that's coming, which is good, Hula Mei 2.0. But what if we started talking about philanthropy with Olivier and Stupski and others, right? That we can now partner with capital that's standing to create impact and ultimately keep more people here and even provide hope too. So that gives me some hope for what our future holds.
I think for me, there's a lot for sure, but I know one of the things we're excited about is, we launched our Ua our rent to own program about 2.5 years ago, and the whole thing about it was, look, we've been around for 25 years as housing counselors, and we've gotten thousands of people housing ready, meaning credit scores are great, debt to income is great, but it's the cost of housing that we cannot meet, right? And what we decided was we're going to just start to purchase units and pass this on to our clients. We're going to step in the role of an investor and kind of try to get in the way of other investors and show up to look like we have cash and see if we can be the ones to capture these units to go, this is ours, and this is for our people. And this is for the person who just worked 2 years on being able to build their credit, to build their income, to lower their debt. And we're going to have them sit in here as a renter and work with the counselor so that this is their home. 2.5 years in, we've had amazing results. We've had people under 30% AMI closing on units with mortgage lower than their rents were. We're going to keep this for generations to come. So we're super excited about that program and it growing. I think the thing that we can all be a solution of, as we are growing this program, we are attempting to scale. There's a lot of demand from community to ask for us to do more, to scale this at a larger level. We were in escrow for a building, 28 more units that we could have put on. We just fell out of escrow today because we can't get to capital fast enough to the kind of people who own these buildings. These are investors. They like to see things move quick. HCA is not necessarily in a position to have $5 million sitting in our bank accounts to put towards, a bank, and the options that we have are outside of Hawaii. They're not really building tons of relationship with us. They want it, but they still see even organizations like HCA as a risk. We have clean audits. Financially we look great, but there's a big disconnect to the risk that the decline of risk that we provide and the work that we do on the ground versus the speed that money can come in to help us be big players in this situation. So I think working as a community to get opportunities like this, so we're not missing out on the next 30 units, the next 50 units, the next 250 units. I think it's gonna take the community to get us there for sure.
Like what we're talking about, these community-led solutions, these collaborative solutions, these like more innovative financing structures and arrangements. It's not just about having more risk tolerance, right? It's about having more accurate risk assessment. And when we really spend time and look at what's going on in the community, they're not as risky as you would believe. Like that's our old brain programming, thinking about this, looking at the situation, right? These community solutions, the way I like to think about them is they're the most accurate information we have on what will actually work in solving the problems for Hawaii. And that's a different kind of risk assessment. And that's the more calibrated risk assessment that I think we need to have when we think about moving money in new ways. And what gives me hope is, I kind of live in a bubble, right? It doesn't take much to look out and see what's happening in our world and the trajectory that we're on in many places in our societies and our communities. And if you truly care about the well-being of our communities, and if you truly care about like what we're leaving for 2 or 3 generations from now, if you really care to see like we have more equity and less inequity, and more people can make it and not suffer, like if you really care about those things, like you have to have an honest assessment that what we've been doing isn't working. And doing more of it is not gonna fix it. And so that's why we have to support these kinds of innovations because we have a lot of them in Hawaii. And that's the bubble I live in. I get to work with amazing leaders from community with collaborative solutions. I get to work with philanthropists and impact investors and government officials who want to move capital differently, who want to see better and more innovative solutions out there. And we're willing to be a little bit different. And that's all it takes. We all got to be a little bit different to create better solutions and better fit, right? And so what gives me hope is I see it already. Like I see these solutions and I see diverse stakeholders coming together with solutions, with community, with philanthropy, with government dollars, with private dollars, coming together and trying to align and be in right relationship with each other in new ways to navigate the uncertainty and the complexity of the problems that we're facing, right? And the thing I'll just leave is like, all of this sounds really good in theory, and in practice it's hard, right? In practice it's hard because we're all programmed to, this is how we do things. And it's hard for us to be different. But when we are, right, we can really start to innovate. But we have to understand that these kinds of innovations are not going to always work perfectly, right? Just like you have to invest into R&D and you're going to have some failure and you're going to work things out. We have to look at our community solutions the same way, right? Yeah, they're not going to be perfect. But when you have the trust and the relationships that these collaborations are seeding, you have the ability to know when a wave comes, you can surf it. When you know, like you can adjust and you can adapt along the way. And that's not possible when we have very rigid structures and one-off solutions, right? If a one-off solution fails, guess what? But if instead of like focusing on a one-off solution, if we can invest in a direction, like we collectively want to go in that direction, then we can kind of tack along the way as we make our way there. But it takes all of us coming together to have that kind of like collaboration and shared agreement and like desire to work together, even when it's hard, even when we fail, like, and to celebrate with each other and all these things, right? Like, there's so much. What gives me hope is I seeing the healing happening, and I'm really confident that we have the alchemy of relationships and accountability and commitment to this place and to future generations that people are figuring it out. And as we do more of these solutions, we're gonna have more demonstration, we're gonna have more evidence to say, hey, look what's possible. You don't have to do it that way. Here's the new way. And then we can slowly start to shift the tide of how we invest in community solutions.
And the folks up here on the stage, and so many in the audience, if you haven't built a relationship with them and you want to take some risks and you're curious, they're right here in this room. So let's have some conversation. Let's give it up for our round of applause. And we're going to open up for a couple questions from the audience for a little while here, and I can run a mic. Questions? Don't be shy. Yeah. You.
Since the doctors. See, we talk in front of everyone. All my kako, we have walk with the Pinoa, Makaina, Wakia, Mahi Kina, and Kohui, Mahan Kalike. Here, Mahawaki, Mahawaki, Kilbo. My name is Vinami Tizwafu. I'm from Hana, Maui, representing Mahan Kalike. And I work as the CFO at Makana Ike, but also the program manager, garbage bag changer. And I taught a course, Kuho Vai with Hawaiian Community Assets about 4 years ago. And it's from that course that I want to ask this question of hunting for a couple of years. We did that course, financial literacy, with some of our native Hawaiian youth in East Maui. And they weren't happy. They were in the back of the classroom. They would leave the classroom, mostly post-secondary, 18 to 24. And after one of the classes, I asked one of the young Hawaiian boys, I said, hey, how come you leave it every time? They told me, you know what, Uncle? You guys only measuring what kind of money I can get. Not measuring the relationships that I get with my aina, that I get with my kaihulu, with my kai, my vai. None of that is valuable to you. You're making me make a choice to not be Hawaiian. If I focus on being good at stacking money. Oh, I had such a hard time that day as a finance professional, like thinking about it over the years. There's no inventory that young man can afford to be smart. Median home price 1.3 million, right? There's no job that young man can do. And I'm asking him to change, to put his focus on money instead of relationships. Chasing money instead of mama. Over the years, I've struggled with how do we build community programming that has a mama score that's just equal as a credit score. And I look at the people in our community, we know that fit the mold, but we keep saying, come on, you can do it. You gotta change. You gotta do this, you gotta do that. And then I remember what that boy said. They said, at the end, I'm not even gonna be Hawaiian. Because I'm not gonna have any relationship in my kupuna, my kua. As a Native Hawaiian citizen organizations, how can we bridge that gap between the focus on money as a metric and mana as a metric?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So before I started as the executive director at HCA, I actually had the privilege of teaching the Kahua Bye curriculum on the weekends to families over at what was then QOCC, but now the Economic Trust. So many of the families were single parent households. One parent had already passed away. Huge kind of change in their income. I don't view Kahua Bye as something that you have to choose one or the other, right? When that curriculum was created, it was created by the community, not by ranks, not by CFOs. It was in the elementary schools, to the high schools, to teachers, to families. And so a lot of it's the depth of what you're willing to go into. And what I talk about when I teach the class is always, I want to recognize the Hawaiians' relationship with money is shitty. Because we have to sit in this capitalist system that wasn't meant for us, and it sucks. And we have to have those conversations. We have to talk about the feelings that we go through, the judgment that we get about money, the things about how shame it is to not have money, and then the shame to have to ask for money. We were raised in a system where we are embarrassed every time we talk about money. But the reality is that our kupuna, Kulipakalani, was the first one to ever start a bank for women. Our kupuna knew that we were moving into a system that required us to be educated in it. And this is the opportunity for us to choose to be educated or not. It's just a choice. It's a choice of whether or not we're going to choose to be educated in the system that we're in, or not. We don't agree with it. Many of us do not want to be in it. But it's the system we're in. We can learn it, or we cannot learn it. But these conversations are hard. Yeah.
Well, my kako, Gary Malakafoko, you know, and I'm Kamayao, my name's Gary. I'm Mahiai with Ma'o. I want to mahalo you folks for sharing your stories. And mahalo to my brother from Hana. Very similar question. Ma'o's very fortunate to have been recipients of a very large land donation from the Weinberg Foundation. And we are looking at affordable housing. We're deep in it actually, and over the past 2 months we've done a lot of community outreach and had a succession of community engagement meetings. Really successful. And to my brother's point is that the young people that are showing up for the meetings, and in this case these are young people probably in their very late 20s into their mid-late 30s, what they've told us is that they're now professionals, working for very good organizations, and in some cases leading those organizations. They have the residual of college education and loans that they have to deal with. They are making enough money in their jobs to pay for a mortgage, but they do not have any savings. I guess my question is riffs off what Billy was saying about their program with OHA, which is, that OHA is something, it's a big surprise. So, hallelujah. My question to you is a little bit out of the box thinking for you, Chelsie, for us, because you are on board, is that if you could design a mortgage product that was manaful and did all the things we need to do. Now, all these young people actually have generational connection to our community. They're born and raised in our community. Most of them live in Kapolea Mahikilo. And most of them start in the morning because some of them are mahiai. So if you had your druthers, what is a mortgage instrument that you would create for us, all of us?
Okay, so this is a funny question because I literally was on the phone with 2 lenders today asking them this question and they both laughed at me. But but I'm gonna ask the question anyway. I know, I'm still not Billy is sitting here. I asked, can you use seller's credit to go towards your down payment? And there are certain loans that allow that, but there are loans that are not backed by FHA and some of the regulators, right? So normal conventional loans don't work like that because of the way the system has been set up for us, where you have to have plenty of money in order to get into a house. But there has been unconventional loans that does allow seller credit to be credited towards your down payment. So for example, if you're buying a house for $500,000, but you need $100,000 down, I would put in an offer for $625,000 with a seller's credit of $125,000 that could then go towards my cost of my down payment and closing costs. If I had a dream loan of what that would look like, that would eliminate the need for those large down payments for people. But simple as that.
Yeah, I can add to that. I mean, you guys have heard of VA loans, VA mortgages. That's the loan, right? But local people who aren't in the military or don't have a connection to veteran status, they don't have access to that. But those loans, you get 103% financing, so no need anything out of pocket, right? Your credit score, they're a lot more flexible on who gets approved for these. And so the way we looked at it at ASB was, how do we create VA loans for local people? And we're not there yet, but we're making our way down there. Seller's credit is obviously a great tool because we use that today to buy down rate. So we make it more, bring it on the monthly, right, for the families. But if we could find a way, and the way the government can do it is because they guarantee it, right? So they de-risk it, and as a result of them de-risking it, banks don't have to charge as much. And so, and not just banks, but mortgage brokers and lenders. So similar to what we're doing with OHA. OHA is de-risking our mortgage program. We're taking some risk, but they're de-risking it so that we can charge less. And if we can continue to do more and more of that with organizations, then we can address the cost of financing. Now, the problem with OHA, or the problem with we call it the AHO program, is no more inventory. So people get pre-qualified for this killer mortgage. They're gonna save a bunch of money on the monthly. They don't have to come up with a lot down, but then they can't find a house. They can't find a place. A lot of them are finding these condos that are 50, 60 years old, and they're like, with the insurance, and they're like, I don't know if I want to commit to that. So again, no silver bullet, but we're trying to address one side of the financing equation, and we got a lot of people. I saw a handful. We need to make our nonprofit developer, which Keoni can share a little bit more, that nonprofit developer community stronger. I think that's how we're going to get more affordable inventory added to our supply. Again, no, I definitely don't own the monopoly on good ideas, but I know that we need more supply.
We could do a private lender, then that first and then refinance with the home loan.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need a private lender. Yeah.
These are great, and yes, we need these solutions, but I want to make sure we're thinking about the long game too, right? Like, these are great interim solutions to meet where the market's at right now. Yes, we can build more supply. Yes, we can make the financing more affordable and reduce barriers. But that's not the long-term solution when you look at what's happening in parallel with our housing market, right? As we have more and more billionaires and maybe a trillionaire soon, and you have folks whose passive net worth is increasing and compounding, like on top of each other, right? And you can't slow that trend down. right, under the current paradigm. And so what are you seeing, right? They're gonna just have more assets. And what are they gonna do? They're gonna buy more assets. And so the threat of private equity owning our housing stock is real, right? It's already happening. They're projecting what, 50% is gonna be owned by private equity by 2030 if this trend continues? So yes, we need these solutions in the interim, but we need to be thinking about the decommodification of housing, right? And getting as much inventory over time off of the speculative market. Otherwise, it's going to be owned by private equity. And we're going to be renters for the rest of our lives, right? That's where our community is going to be. So, like, we have to think about our interventions at multiple time scales and altitudes, right? And so, yes, these are creative solutions, but we also have to be working things in parallel, because if we let this trend continue, like, there's no hope for white grandkids, you know?
Perfect. And that's where we're gonna, I'm so sorry, but we gotta wrap up. Autumn raised her hand. She has a lot of brilliant ideas. And this conversation is gonna continue into dessert. I just wanna say, just to wrap up here, a few things that have come up. One is we need to create a new future parallel to the future that we're in right now. What does that look like? That's going to be a bit messy, and it's going to have some moments of failure. But when you're in a relationship with folks, we'll endure past that failure, and collectively we'll come up with those solutions. And we'll de-risk through relationship.
That's right.
And let's try things, and let's learn from those, and let's hold each other accountable, but let's do it in real and right relationship. So all of us in this room, whether you're leading a nonprofit, you're staff at a nonprofit, you manage money, you manage an endowment, you're a grant maker, all of us are a part of this conversation. And all of us are invited into this conversation, and that conversation is now going to dessert. So mahalo everyone for joining us.